Hey guys! Tonight we slip into rough wool, step into mud-caked boots, and brace ourselves against a biting wind that cuts through every layer you own. You're not in a castle. You're not even in a tavern. You are the backbone of the Middle Ages. A common peasant with cracked hands, creaky joints, and a belly that hasn't seen meat in weeks. The fire's gone out again. The baby's crying, and you've got 2 onions and a hunk of rye to feed 6 mouths. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing the global peasant village we've built. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's deep winter. The ground is iron, the trees bare, and your breath curls in front of you like dragon smoke. Dawn arrives late, sulking behind clouds like a teenager forced to wake up early. You rise before her, of course you always do. The chickens are restless in their coop. The pig is snorting like it had dreams of warmer slop, and your youngest is curled up in a corner wrapped in an old shawl, nose red as a berry. You fumble through the dark, your fingers numb as you pour yesterday's coals into the hearth and blow gently. If you're lucky, a spark catches. If not, you'll be trading eggs for kindling by midday. The thatch roof above your head creaks with the weight of snow, and you're almost certain a mole or two has taken up residence in your pantry wall. Food. Let's not get our hopes up. You've got maybe a week's worth of dried peas, some turnips that taste more like wood than vegetable, and a single jar of pickled cabbage that no one wants to open because of the smell. But smell means it's still good, right? A few hunks of rye bread remain brick hard and suspiciously green around the edges. You slice them anyway, dunk them in whatever warm water you can manage, and call it soup. You tell the children it's a feast. They chew in silence, which is probably gratitude in peasant speak. You head outside. Your boots crunch through the snow and the village is still. No birds, no movement, just smoke threading upward from a few chimneys, brave little signals that others are alive too. You nod at your neighbor old Gerwin, who's already chopping frozen wood with a kind of grumpy determination that makes you respect him, even if he once tried to sell you a miracle leech for gout. Speaking of which, did you know some historians think peasants were cleaner than nobles during parts of the Middle Ages? Shocking, right? Bathhouses were more common than we imagine. Problem was, in winter, getting naked near a bucket of water could be fatal. So you make do. You wipe your hands with straw. You swish your mouth with ale, and you scrape dirt from under your nails with a bit of broken comb. Hygiene. Enough to not die, hopefully. By midday, you're checking your storage pits. You dig into one with chilled fingers, lifting a half-rotted carrot and deciding, it'll boil. The wind picks up. Somewhere a dog barks, probably at the same wind that lifted your thatch last week. Then comes the real task. Rationing. You gather your stores in the middle of your one-room cottage count. Your grains sniff the lard and pray the cheese hasn't walked off on its own. This year was lean. The harvest didn't yield as much as hoped, and last week's rat infestation left little gifts you're still discovering. You mark each portion for the days ahead, scratching tallies into a bit of slate with a nail. 1 mark per day. 2. If you think your oldest will sneak a piece when no one's looking. You debate hiding the good rye in the chimney, but remember last time, soot rye is not the delicacy you thought it'd be. You sit by the door as dusk falls early. You watch the sun vanish without much ceremony, and think how the earth sleeps under its blanket of frost. But you can't. The hens still need a check. The roof still drips, and one of the goats looks like it might be planning something. You sigh deeply, because winter hasn't even peaked yet. Fun fact, some peasants believed if you burned a pinch of rosemary on the last new moon of winter, your stores would stretch just enough to make it. Historians still argue whether that was superstition or just a desperate way to mask the scent of spoiled butter. Either way, you'll try it. The morning comes grudgingly gray and sullen. You wake up not because you're rested, but because the roof dripped meltwater directly onto your forehead. Again, you wipe it away with your sleeve and sit up, your joints cracking like old timber. The air inside your home is almost as cold as the air outside, except it smells more strongly of sweat smoke and livestock. You blink at the tiny window, frost-painted and useless, and steel yourself for another day of winter chores. First things first, the animals. The pig has managed to kick over its trough again, possibly out of spite. You mutter something about turning it into sausages. Come spring, though, deep down, you know it's the most valuable member of the household. Pigs eat everything, even things they shouldn't. Like your shoe last year. You grab a splintery bucket and trudge to the well. It takes 3 tries to break the ice on the surface. By the time you haul up a full bucket, your hands have turned a charming shade of blue. A splash sloshes down your front, soaking through your tunic. You sigh. Wet wool. The signature peasant perfume. Back at the cottage, you mix the water with old bran and pour it into the pig's new makeshift trough, your daughter's broken cradle. She's 6 now and far too tall for it. It wobbles under the pig's snout but holds. Victory. Next, the chickens. They're indignant as usual, squawking like you've insulted their mothers. You scatter a handful of feed, mostly dried peas, and whatever crumbs you swept up from the floor, and hope they'll grace you with an egg or 2. It's rare in winter, but not impossible. You've even heard of one hen who laid through January and got knighted by a drunken baron. Probably a joke, but peasants cling to stories like that, half-truths that feel warm in the cold. You muck out the stalls, goat and pig, and spread the waste on the fallow field near the edge of the village. Fertilizer. It smells like death, but it's gold to the soil. This is one of the few things no one debates. Even the monks agree, manure is a holy gift. He who spreads dung shall not hunger, Brother Alain once said with alarming sincerity. Historians still argue whether he was being profound or just trying to get out of helping. By now the sun's crawling higher, but only just. You patch a hole in the chicken coop with twine and straw, your fingers fumbling more than fixing. The wind tugs at your sleeves. You wrap your scarf tighter. It smells faintly of mold and continue. There's also the matter of your thatch. It's been sagging near the chimney. You can't fix it alone, and your cousin Jory says he'll help after the frost. You're not sure which frost he means, this one, next week's, the one in his head. In any case, you take matters into your own blistered hands. You prop a ladder, really. It's just a suspiciously long fence plank against the wall, and climb. The view from the roof isn't half bad. The village is a cluster of smoke and snow, like someone dropped a handful of soot-covered dice across a white blanket. You wave to a child throwing snowballs at a tree. He misses twice, then shrieks with joy when a crow flaps off offended. The thatch is wet and fraying. You stuff it with bundles of dried reeds you collected in late autumn. They crinkle under your fingers, a rare crisp sound in a world of soggy textures. You secure the bundles with rough twine and say a small prayer, mostly to the spirit of gravity, not to smite you. Back inside, your stomach growls. Time for lunch or something resembling it. You slice a turnip into thin slivers and toss it in the pot with water, a pinch of salt, and hope. There's no meat. There hasn't been meat in weeks. You eye the chicken with mild suspicion, and it eyes you back equally mistrustful. You remember an old tale the elder used to tell about a village so poor the children used to roast river stones with herbs and pretend they were stew. Some say it was real. Others say it was just to keep kids from complaining. Either way, you've tried it. It's exactly as satisfying as licking gravel. After eating, you sit by the hearth and begin to mend. Mending never ends. Your tunic has a new rip under the arm. Your son's hose is missing half a foot. Your wife's shift is more whole than fabric. You patch with patches of patches, sewing crooked lines while the fire sputters. As you stitch, you glance at the door. Snow is falling again, soft and slow. It sticks to the trees like flour. There's a silence in the air, the deep kind that only comes when everything else is buried or sleeping. You pause, needle in hand, and just breathe. Then the goat bleats. And just like that, you're back up. Goats have opinions, and this one thinks the fence post is an affront to its dignity. It's chewed halfway through. You grab a hammer, 2 bent nails, and a prayer. Again. By dusk, your hands are red and swollen. But the coop is patched. The pig is fed. The goat is mostly contained, and your patched cloak feels slightly less drafty. You settle in by the hearth feet, stretched toward the flame. You didn't plow today. You didn't sow. But this is still farming. This is how you survive the parts between the parts when there's no glory in the work, only the repetition. And still you're here. By the third week of February, something shifts. Not in the air, not yet, but in your bones. You feel it before you see it. A restlessness. The sun, though still half asleep, starts rising a little earlier. The frost lingers less stubbornly on the thatch, and you, with your cracked hands and aching back, begin to think maybe it's almost time to start again. But before you can even think about putting seed to soil, there's the matter of your soul. It's Lent now, or nearly so, and that means a whole new set of obligations. Fewer meals, more prayers. Absolutely no laughter during Mass, which is hard when the new altar boy keeps dropping the incense burner like it's cursed. Spoiler, it probably is. The priest, Father Elric, has already made his rounds reminding you that abstaining from meat will bring you closer to salvation. You resist the urge to ask what meat exactly you're supposed to be giving up. The salted herring that tried to grow legs, or the sausage so old it might technically be a relic. There's more than spiritual business in the air, though. It's tax season, sort of. See, this is the time of year when your landlord or his steward, usually a man with a hat too big for his head, and a smirk that could sour milk, comes knocking. Not for money, of course. You don't have money. He wants promises. That you'll work his domain fields first. That you'll lend your oxen if you're lucky enough to have them for plowing. That you'll give your best seed, your best labor, your best everything. But you know how this game works? You nod. You bow. And when he's gone, you quietly negotiate with your neighbors. Jory has one ox left. Gerwin has a plow slightly warped. Together, it's almost a team. You'll have to share, of course. Rotate the ox between 3 families, maybe 4. It's like a terribly organized timeshare, but with more manure. There's also the land rights. You don't own the field you till. It belongs to the Lord. Or the Abbey. Or maybe both, depending on which document you believe and who's holding the sword. Historians still argue whether peasants truly understood the web of ownership or just pretended to like you do when someone explains feudal tenure using too many Latin words. So you visit the manor house. Not the big one. Yours is more of a large shed with delusions of grandeur. You stand in line behind 10 other peasants, each gripping their wool caps like their shields. When it's your turn, the steward asks if you're ready to pledge your days. You smile. You nod. You don't mention that your back is still stiff from mending the roof and your wife's pregnant again. 3 days a week on the Lord's field, he says, tapping a ledger with a feathered quill. You wonder where they even get feathers that clean. And 1 goose come Michaelmas. You pretend not to flinch. You were hoping to eat that goose. Afterward, you meet Jory and Gerwin behind the smithy, whispering like you're planning a crime, which in a way you are, trying to get your own plot plowed before the Lord's. You agree on a system. Jory gets the ox first. You get it third. Gerwin brings the ale. The ale is crucial, not for bartering, for morale. You walk home past frozen furrows staring at the ground that will soon become your obsession. You've seen bad seasons. Floods, droughts, locusts, or what you called locusts. Some kind of terrifying beetle swarm. But you've also seen miracles. A single row of barley that grew tall and golden while everything else wilted. A patch of beans that refused to rot even after the 3rd frost. That night, you sharpen your tools. The iron plowshare is dull, and your whetstone is chipped, but you make do. You oil the yoke straps, patch the leather harness, and tuck your seed sacks out of reach from the rats. You've lost enough to those whiskered demons. 1 year, you swear they organized. They even left droppings in the shape of a rude gesture. As you work, your daughter asks if she can help plow this year. She's only 7. You tell her maybe, which means yes, because who else do you have? She beams and runs off to braid her hair like the women do for planting festivals. And for just a moment, you feel something, hope maybe, or the ghost of it. Before bed, you kneel by the hearth and whisper a prayer, not one from the priest's book, but one you learned from your grandmother. It involves salt, a sprig of rosemary, and the direction of the moon. You're not sure it works. But then again, last year's wheat grew tall, didn't it? You crawl into bed beside your wife. who is already asleep, snoring softly into the straw. You pull the cloak over your shoulders and shut your eyes. Spring is coming. The ground is still hard when you make the first cut. You've waited watching the sky each morning for signs. The crows have returned. The streams run louder now, swollen with meltwater. Even the moss on the stones looks brighter, like it knows something you don't. That's your cue. You shoulder your worn cloak, grab the handles of the wooden plow, and coax Jory's ox into motion. Or try to. The beast gives you a look that says, "Absolutely not," before lumbering forward with a fart of protest. You're plowing borrowed land with a borrowed animal using tools that wouldn't impress a Roman, but it's what you've got. So you brace your feet in the thawing mud, lean your weight against the handles, and feel the first line of soil give beneath the blade. It's heavy work, the kind that leaves your arms trembling and your back screaming. The ox moves in fits and starts occasionally stopping to glare at something invisible. You pull, you shout. You bribe it with a lump of stale bread. It works. Once. Mostly, each furrow you carve feels like progress and punishment. Your boots fill with wet earth. Your knees ache. A blister pops on your palm and you suck in air through your teeth like it might help. But the scent of it that churned earth cold and rich is oddly sweet. Like iron and rain and memory. You remember helping your father do this? He had stronger hands, but the same wince at the end of each row. Good soil's like a good woman, he used to say. Hard to win, harder to keep happy. Your mother never appreciated that one. As you work, others join in the fields. Jory and Gerwin with their own ragtag setups. A pair of sisters from the next hamlet trading off turns with the plow and singing tunes, with suspiciously raunchy verses. You smirk. Even in toil, there's a kind of camaraderie, like you're all part of a slow, muddy parade toward survival. You glance behind you. The field looks like it's been combed by a drunken giant. Not perfect, but plowed. You'll smooth it later. Or not. The seed doesn't care much for aesthetics. Did you know that medieval plows weren't uniform? Some used the heavy-wheeled plow, great for thick northern soils. Others relied on the lighter scratch plow, more common down south. You've tried both, though. You're convinced the real variable isn't the tool, but the person holding it. Historians still argue whether innovation in plowing truly reached peasants, or whether you all just got better at improvising with broken wood and curses. You take a break around noon, sit on a rock, pull out a heel of rye and a sliver of aged cheese so sharp it could double as a weapon. You chew slowly, savoring each gritty bite. Across the field, Gerwin's ox has decided to nap. Jory's trying to push it. It's not working. You sip from your leather flask ale, thinned with water and thyme, and wipe sweat from your brow. The sun, weak but welcome, glints off a patch of snow still hiding beneath a hedge. You think briefly about how good it would feel to just lie down in that cold, soft patch. But no, if you rest now, the work won't get done. And if the work doesn't get done, there's no bread. And if there's no bread, well then, Jory's goose might mysteriously disappear in the night. Again, by late afternoon, the field's halfway plowed. You're filthy. You're sore. But you're oddly proud. You know, this isn't the final step, it's only the stage. The prelude to the sowing. But it's essential. Every groove you dig now is a promise. A gamble. A whispered please to the future. You head home as the sun begins to drop, trailing red behind it like spilled wine. The ox plods beside you, looking smug. You scratch its neck despite yourself. Back at the cottage, your daughter runs out barefoot, shrieking with delight. She's made you something, a flower crown. It's wilted and mostly moss, but she sets it on your muddy hair like it's a coronation. Your wife ladles out stew made from lentils, turnips, and something you suspect used to be cabbage. You slurp it gratefully, your arms too tired to lift the bowl properly. Your son climbs into your lap. He smells like goats. You don't care. As night falls, you sit by the fire staring at your hands. They're cracked dirt embedded so deep it might be permanent. You flex them, wincing. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. And the next day. And the day after that. Until every inch of earth you're allowed to touch has been broken and made ready. Your wife asks if it went well. You nod. Because it did. Morning breaks with the soft thud of hooves and the faint, damp smell of mildew rising from the earth. Your boots squelch before you've even stepped off your threshold, and today is no time for sluggishness. It's sowing day, the kind of day that determines whether you'll feast come autumn or spend the winter eating boiled bark again. You grip the grain sack with both hands, hoist it over your shoulder, and head into the field like a knight with a very itchy tunic. The earth greets you with grudging softness. It's still cool, still sticky but pliable enough to accept seed. You walk the length of the furrows, each line a little wobbly, thanks to Jory's ox's refusal to walk straight. Doesn't matter now. What matters is getting the grain into the ground before the rain. You reach into the sack and grab a handful. It's barley, pale gold, smooth and precious beyond measure. You scatter it with a wide practiced motion, an arc, like a wave from one hip out to the side. You've done this so many times your body moves before your mind catches up. The seed falls in rhythmic spurts, bouncing once or twice before disappearing into the furrows. You move in rows, carefully overlapping just enough so nothing is missed. There's a pace to it, a slow meditation. You're breathing harder than you thought you would. The sack digs into your shoulder. The wind has picked up. Still you keep going. Step, scoop, scatter. Step, scoop, scatter. Birds circle overhead. You curse them under your breath. One particularly bold jackdaw lands on a fence post and stares at you like it's judging your technique. You throw a pebble. It doesn't move, just tilts its head unimpressed. You mutter a threat about turning it into pie and keep walking. It's not just barley going into the ground today. You've also got rye. Some peasants grow oats. The richer ones, meaning not you, sometimes add a patch of flax for cloth. Your wife begged you to save a corner for onions. You said yes because you're not stupid. Around midday, a storm cloud muscles its way over the hills. You pick up the pace. Fast sowing is risky, uneven, sloppy, but letting seed get washed away. Worse, you call for help. Your daughter runs out barefoot again, carrying the smaller sack. Together, you work in tandem. She's still learning. Her scatter is too tight at first, then too wide. But she's smiling, and the birds keep their distance, so you let her keep going. A droplet hits your cheek. Then another. You both groan. And then it comes the sudden, soaking spring rain. You curse the heavens. Your daughter squeals and starts spinning in it like some pagan fairy. You yell for her to stop before she muds up the seedbed, but the wind eats your words. You kneel and cover the last few rows with your cloak, trying to protect the seed. It's mostly symbolic, but you do it anyway, because effort counts even if it changes nothing. By the time you're done, you're soaked, covered in mud from shin to eyebrow, and the field is a churned mess of hoofprints, footprints, and dreams. You slump down on a boulder and watch as the rain washes the dust from the leaves, the air thick with the scent of wet grass and fresh earth. Did you know that medieval peasants often sang during sowing? Little rhyming chants sometimes, blessings, sometimes curses, sometimes both. One old one went, "Grow straight, grow true, or I'll dig you up and stew you." Charming. Historians still argue whether the songs were ritual or just ways to keep rhythm while breaking your back. You hum one now, not because you believe it helps, but because it feels like the right thing to do. Back home, you strip off your tunic and hang it by the hearth. Steam rises off your shoulders. Your wife clucks her tongue and hands you a warm cloth. The stew is better tonight. There's a chunk of something meaty in it. You don't ask what. After supper, your son asks how seeds know which way to grow. You blink. Then you tell him something your father told you, that each one carries a tiny piece of the sun inside it, and when the soil wakes up, it remembers which way the light is. He nods solemnly. You smile, pretending it's not a lie. Or maybe it's not. Who really knows? That night, as the rain drips from the eaves and the fire crackles low, you lie awake wondering if you spread enough, if you spread too much, if the birds stole half of it, if the rats stole the rest. You wonder if the soil was warm enough, if the barley was dry enough, if you are good enough, because sowing is the most terrifying kind of hope. It asks you to give everything away. With no promise, it'll come back. Nights are warmer now, but that only means the rats are bolder. You wake to the sound of scratching, a high, determined noise coming from behind the grain sacks. You sit up groggy, grabbing the closest weapon available, a wooden spoon. You creep toward the noise, trying not to wake the rest of the family. The spoon isn't for the rat, it's for dramatic effect. You bang it against the wall and shout, "Shoo!" like a madman in your own kitchen. The noise stops. For now, outside the world is slowly stirring. The frost is gone. In its place, damp mornings mist over the fields and the unmistakable scent of things growing. Green tips push out of the furrows barley mostly. You crouch to look. Each sprout is barely the width of a blade of grass trembling in the wind, like it's not sure it belongs. But it's alive. You whisper something soft to them, maybe encouragement, maybe a bribe. But now begins the season of vigilance. You walk the edge of your field with a stick in hand, poking at clods, checking for footprints. Fox prints are common. You know they're mischief. Chickens are always at risk. But what you're really watching for are the four-legged thieves with horns, or worse, your neighbor's sheep. Last year, Jory's youngest let the flock out too early and they trampled a good half row. You haven't forgotten. So you build, you mend, you reinforce the hedgerow with bramble. You tie dangling bits of cloth from sticks to wave in the wind like scarecrows, only lazier. You set up stones to trip small animals. You keep a sling in your belt and practice with it after supper using dried chestnuts as ammo. But it's not just pests with paws you have to watch for. The weeds come fast and sly. One day, clean rows. The next, creepers, thistles, and something your wife calls the crawling devil. You don't ask why. You just pull it up with your bare hands. Over and over. Weeding is duller than plowing and somehow harder. Your back bends low. Your fingers dig deep. The roots break off sometimes, and you swear under your breath. A few kids from the village pass by laughing and throwing pebbles. One calls out you missed a patch. You don't even look up. Sometimes you get help. Your daughter works beside you, humming the same off-key lullaby she sings to the goat. Your wife joins in when she's not washing or weaving. It's quiet work but steady, and it keeps you grounded literally. Around the full moon, the barley shoots are ankle high. You start rotating night watch. Gerwin does Mondays. Jory takes weekends. You get Tuesdays and Thursdays. You stay up late, wrapped in your cloak, sitting on a splintered stool with the sling across your lap. Some nights you doze off and wake with a jolt heart racing at the sound of rustling. One time it's a deer, another time just the wind. Once you swear you saw a glowing figure across the far field. You don't tell anyone. They'd either laugh or tell the priest. Neither is appealing. Did you know that in some parts of medieval Europe, peasants believed crops would grow better if they were sung to by moonlight? Some even claimed certain chants would keep the weevils away. Historians still argue whether this was genuine agronomy or just boredom wrapped in superstition. You sing a little anyway, just in case. The barley grows. So do the headaches. A storm rolls through mid-month. Not a pleasant misty drizzle, but a full-blown tantrum. Thunder wind and the kind of sideways rain that makes you wonder if the sky's trying to erase everything. You run out in the dark, flailing to cover seedlings with rush mats. Your daughter follows soaked and barefoot, dragging a bucket. You laugh like fools and scream over the thunder. The morning after you assess the damage, some sprouts are flattened. One furrow is waterlogged, but the rest miraculously still stands. You exhale a thanks first to the saints, then to the goat. She braved the storm too, sheltering beneath the cart with a look of divine indifference. By late spring, the field is alive. The sprouts are knee-high and swaying. You walk among them, palms grazing the tops. You can smell green in the air, fresh, sharp, a little sour. It's working. The planting took, now comes patience. That night, you sit by the fire with your family. The stew is thinner, but spirits are high. Someone made bread rough and chewy, but hot from the hearth. Your son tells a joke he barely understands. Everyone laughs. You think just for a moment that maybe this year will be different, maybe better. You look at your hands stained green at the fingertips and feel something rare stir in your chest. Pride. You wake sweating the sun already sharp through the thin parchment of the window. Summer has arrived not with ceremony, but with a slap. The air is thick with heat and the humming of flies, and even the rooster seems too exhausted to crow properly. Still, the chores don't pause for heat stroke. You haul yourself upright, shake the straw from your tunic, and prepare for the next battle. Living through midsummer. First, you drag a bucket to the stream and dunk it in. The water is warm. Somehow, you splash your face anyway and sigh. There's no relief, just wetness, the kind that clings to your skin and makes your clothes heavier than they have any right to be. You trudge back toward the field where the barley is waist-high and golden-tipped, waving like the sea in a breeze you can't feel. It's beautiful. It's also an infestation waiting to happen. This time of year you become a guardian, not a noble knight, more like a sweaty scarecrow with anger issues. There's a rabbit problem again. You find droppings near the hedge line. You consider digging a trench, or maybe setting traps with your son's help. You also consider simply yelling at them. Again, you've heard it worked once in France. Historians still argue whether that countess was mad or a tactical genius. You spend the morning patrolling, stick in one hand, sling in the other. You find a trail of snapped stalks and follow it to discover a badger asleep and snoring like a drunken monk. You leave it alone. Even you have limits. By mid-morning, you've sweat through everything. Even your thoughts are sticky. You pull your tunic over your head, tie it around your waist, and curse the sun. Your daughter scolds you for being indecent. The goat once again eats something she shouldn't. You mutter that she's probably smarter than half the village. But today isn't just about labor. It's St. Ethelburga's feast day, which means blessedly a small reprieve. You return home and find your wife laying out the festival garb. It's not much, just your least patched tunic and the belt that only mostly smells of cheese. She's woven fresh daisies into your daughter's hair and smudged something on her cheeks to make her look sun-kissed. She already is, but the gesture's sweet. You follow the procession to the church. Bells ring. Children carry garlands. An old man plays something vaguely musical on a reed pipe. The priest blesses the fields again, though he looks like he'd rather be napping in the shade. You don't blame him. After the sermon, the dancing begins. You're not good at dancing. Never were. But you get pulled in anyway, spinning in a loose circle while someone claps unevenly. You laugh mostly from dizziness. Your wife throws you a look that says, try not to throw up again. There's food. Glorious, slightly questionable food. Someone roasted a goose. Someone else brought pickled apples. You contribute a loaf of coarse rye and a jug of ale that's more froth than fluid. No one minds. No one complains. For one afternoon, no one is hungry. You sit in the grass, legs stretched out, biting into a boiled egg so old it could vote. It's good. Everything is good when you haven't tasted joy in a while. Your son tries to wrestle Jory's kid and ends up with a mouthful of turf. They both laugh anyway. It's not all celebration. You hear talk. Quiet talk about a field on the far side of the river, mold in the wheat, someone's cow with a fever, the kind of whispers that never quite ruin the mood, but haunt it around the edges. You make a mental note to check your own grain for spots. Again, by evening, the festivities slow. People drift home like embers on the wind. Your wife gathers the children who are sticky with sweat and crumbs. You help your neighbor carry his drunk uncle back to his cart. You've done this before. You'll do it again. As twilight descends, the village seems soft, melted slightly at the edges. Fireflies hover over the fields. A night bird calls from somewhere in the hedgerow. You sit on the threshold of your home, watching your wife braid her hair by firelight. You don't say it aloud, but the day has filled something inside you. A reminder that even in the middle of toil, there is music. That even under the threat of blight and taxes and badgers, there is bread and dancing. That joy doesn't wait for harvest. It sneaks in where it can. You lie down on the hard-packed earth floor, feeling every joint, every ache, but you fall asleep smiling. You said, the first smell that hits you in the morning isn't bread or barley or your goat's opinionated aroma, it's rot. Specifically, it's the pit latrine. Summer sweetness, you see, always comes with its opposite. The village reeks. Not in a metaphorical way, in a very real, nose-curdling, eye-watering, I just saw a dead vole kind of way. The warmth accelerates everything. The flies, the fermentation, the memories of what you ate last week. You tie a damp cloth over your face and head toward the pit to stir the heap. Yes, stir. No, it's not a fun euphemism. You literally have to turn the waste to keep the smell from becoming apocalyptic and to encourage decomposition. Peasant life. It builds character and weakens sinuses. But before you can even finish that lovely task, your daughter runs up shouting. The berries are ready. It's early, but she's right. You walk to the edge of the woods where the brambles grow thick. Sunlight filters through the trees like warm lace, and the berries gleam like little rubies nestled among the thorns. You and your family set to work, wicker baskets in hand. Your fingertips stain purple as you picky. Some berries are overripe, exploding in your hand. Others are still sour, but many are perfect, and you pop one into your mouth despite yourself. Tart, sun-warmed with a tiny crunch of seed. For a moment, you forget everything else. You know to watch for snakes. Your wife hums a tune to keep them away, an old rhyme her grandmother swore by. Historians still argue whether singing in the fields deterred animals or simply made peasants more fun to stalk. You fill the baskets carefully. This bounty isn't just dessert. It's barter medicine and possibly wine if the season goes well. Back home, your wife sets aside some for drying. The rest she mashes into a paste and smears onto flatbread for dinner. You'd pay a king's ransom for this flavor in winter. Later, you walk the perimeter of your grain field. The barley is tall now, almost chest high, but there's a strange shadow near the corner. You kneel and pull apart the stalks, and there it is. Hot. A dark patch, damp and spreading. You poke it with a stick. The stalks are mushy, dead, blight. You've seen worse, but it's still a gut punch. It starts small, too much. Moisture, too little airflow. One cursed rabbit sneeze and spreads like gossip at a baptism. You remove the patch, pulling the roots, burning the worst of it behind the shed. You return with salt and sprinkle it in a ring. Not because it's scientific, but because your neighbor swears it works. Salt wards off evil and weeds, she says. She also thinks her cat speaks Latin. You hedge your bets. That evening, you visit the healer's hut. Not for yourself yet, but to trade berries for dried tansy and nettle. Summer means scurvy, believe it or not. Not from lack of food, but from lack of right food. Your cousin lost 3 teeth last year. You chew more herbs now. The healer is a crone with 12 cats and 3 teeth of her own. She smells like vinegar and rosemary and says things like, "The stars are wrong for millet this month." You nod, take the tansy, and back away slowly. As the days stretch on, the sun becomes a tyrant. It beats down from morning to dusk, making your tunic cling and your hair itch. You dig a shade trench near the field, just a shallow scoop lined with ferns, so you can crouch in it between chores. It's the closest you'll get to a vacation, but the heat also brings tension. Arguments flare quicker. A wrong word during weeding. A borrowed tool returned too late. Jory accused Gerwin of stealing a sickle. Gerwin accused Jory of having no ears. There was shouting. A chicken may have been thrown. You try to stay neutral, mostly because you need both their help come harvest. The goat, meanwhile, is pregnant, or possibly just fat. You're not sure, but she's more belligerent than usual. Your daughter insists it'll be twins. Your wife insists it better not be more goats. One afternoon, as you nap in the shade trench, you hear music drifting on the breeze. Someone's playing a pipe near the stream. Not well, but earnestly. You close your eyes, the warm air pressing down on you like a thick blanket, and let the melody carry you somewhere else for a few breaths. Because summer is like that. It's rot and raspberries. It's spoiled grain and sweetbread. It's stench and song side by side. It wears you down, then lifts you for a moment, just enough to keep going. And tomorrow it starts again. You're up before the sun mostly because you can't sleep. The air is heavy, thick with the kind of heat that sticks behind your ears and under your knees. You lie on the packed dirt floor for a while, watching shadows shift on the ceiling until you hear the distant roll of thunder. Not sharp, not near, just enough to promise mischief later. Late summer has arrived, and with it, paranoia. Storms, you know, are different this time of year. In spring, they're cleansing. In early summer, they're brief tantrums. But now, they're wrath. Long, soaking, vengeful things that flatten grain and drown hope. You throw on your tunic lace, your boots, and head out before the sky decides your field is an offense. The barley is ready, almost too ready. The heads are bowed with weight golden and swaying your pride and your problem. One harsh wind and they'll break, spill, rot. You touch one gently and it shivers. You mutter, "Not yet. Give me one more week." Your wife finds you pacing the edge of the field and hands you a bundle of wormwood. For the mice, she says, and the spirits. She always includes both just in case. You tuck it into your belt and walk on eyes scanning for mold nests or ominous mushrooms. You find all three. The mushrooms are strange white with a reddish tip clustered like gossip. You don't touch them. Not because you're superstitious, though you are, but because last time your son licked one and dreamed he was a duck for 3 days. You check the lower fields too. Jory's barley looks good. Gerwin's, less so. He planted late and now the heads are short and patchy. You try not to feel smug and mostly succeed. That afternoon the wind rises. You run back to the cottage, grab rush mats and haul them to the field. Your daughter helps you stake them over the lowest rows, makeshift shelter from sideways rain. You work fast, tying twine with numb fingers as the first drops hit. Then it breaks. The storm comes like a scream. Sheets of water pounding the fields. The cottage, your back. You stand out in it. Hands on your hips soaked to the bone and laugh. Because what else can you do? The barley bends but doesn't break. Not yet. You cheer for it. Your daughter cheers too, though, mostly because she loves mud. You huddle by the hearth that night. Clothes steaming bowls of hot lentil porridge in your hands. No meat again, but there's wild garlic in the broth, and somehow that makes it feel special. Your wife massages your shoulders. You don't protest. Not this time. The next day you walk the field again. Damage. Some flattened rows at the edge, runoff carving shallow scars between the furrows. But most of the grain still stands. You exhale through your teeth and mutter, "Close one." You hang the wormwood at the corners of the field like your grandmother used to. 4 bundles, 1 for each direction. You don't know if it works. Historians still argue whether such rituals were folk science, or just a way to feel less powerless. Either way, it gives your daughter something to believe in. There's still scurvy to worry about. You chew more nettle. Your wife mixes dock leaves into the bread. She even found a few wild cherries near the woods, and made a jam so sour it makes your lips pucker from across the room. You eat it anyway, because teeth are nice. Meanwhile, the village is whispering again. This time about a woman downriver whose entire barley crop turned black overnight. Witchcraft, someone says, or mildew, says someone else. Same thing, mutters a third. You keep quiet. You've seen what panic can do. It starts with gossip and ends with pitchforks. You gather the family that evening and walk the rows together. It's a tradition now. You call it speaking to the barley and pretend it's part of an old custom. Maybe it is. You talk about the harvest to come, about how much to store, how much to trade. You dream out loud. Your son asks if you can buy a second goat. Your wife says only if this one stops eating your tools. The sky is clear again. The stars are out, and your daughter insists she sees one twinkling over your field. You tell her it's a good omen. She gasps. Your wife rolls her eyes. You lie awake again that night. Not from heat this time, but thought. You're close now, so close you can taste it. The harvest is coming, and with it, everything. Section 10. You can feel it in your teeth before you feel it in your feet. The weight, the pull, the subtle silent signal in the air that says, it's time. The barley boughs now heads heavy, golden bent in reverence or surrender, depending on how you read the season. When you brush your hand across the top, the grain falls easily into your palm. No resistance, no cling, just a soft shuff as the seeds loosen. You bite one, dry, chewy with that slightly bitter edge. Perfect. It's harvest time. You rise earlier than usual, well before sunrise. You're not alone. Across the village, fires spark in hearths, tools clang against stone, voices mutter over breakfast. You strap on your belt, tuck your sickle into it, and head outside. The air is cool for now. The fields stretch before you like a sea of gold, interrupted only by footpaths and scarecrow stumps. You pull your cloak tighter, say a short, nervous prayer, and begin. You grip the stalks near their base, bend slightly at the waist, and cut in a smooth sweep. Not too high, you don't want to miss the heads. Not too low, you don't want to dull your blade on dirt or stone. The first bundle goes easy. The second too. By the 10th, your back starts to ache. You tie the stalks into sheaves with twine, setting them upright in neat rows. There's a rhythm to it, a slow, repetitive cadence. Grip, sickle, beand, stack, grip, sickle, bind, stack. The sweat starts by mid-morning, even before the sun fully crests the hills. You're not alone. Jory's to your left, Gerwin's to your right, both muttering complaints, both secretly proud. Your daughter's at the edge of the field, picking up stray heads and helping tie bundles. Your wife arrives later with water and hard bread wrapped in cloth that still smells faintly of rosemary. The sun climbs, so does the strain. Your back burns, your palms blister, your arms feel like someone else's, numb and leaden. You keep going anyway, because this is it. This is what the entire year has built toward. The planting, the praying, the cursing, the waiting. All of it comes down to these days, and the weather knows it. Clouds gather by mid-afternoon, high and heavy. Not stormy yet, but watching, waiting. You pick up the pace. Everyone does. The field turns into a kind of choreography. Dozens of peasants moving with mechanical desperation, grim and silent, except for the occasional grunt or dropped sheaf. You sharpen your sickle with a whetstone during breaks. The edge glints. It's your favorite tool, well used, well cared for, and slightly curved like a permanent smirk. You whisper to it sometimes, not in words, just gratitude. One day blends into the next. You rise, you reap, you sleep, repeat. Your hands are permanently curled now, stiff with effort. Your knees crack when you squat. You don't bother removing the straw from your hair at night. What's the point? Did you know medieval peasants sometimes hired extra hands during harvest? Usually younger sons, the landless or wandering workers called gleaners, who followed the cycle from village to village. Historians still argue whether this made harvest fairer or just more chaotic. You're of the opinion that anyone who can tie a sheaf without falling over is a godsend. You don't mind sharing the field, but you do mind the steward. He visits on the third day. He rides in on a horse too clean for this place, with boots too shiny and a smirk that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He watches as you work. Doesn't speak, just watches. Then he makes a note in a leather ledger and says something vague about tithes. You bite your tongue so hard you taste blood. After he leaves, the pace slows. The joy, yes, there was some seeps out. You still harvest, but now with the knowledge that not all of it is yours. The best sheaves will be taken. Some for the Lord, some for the church, some extra in case the steward's numbers are off. Funny how they're always off in his favor. Still you press on. By the end of the week, the field looks shorn. Almost violated. But the sheaves are tall, proud, stacked in orderly rows under canvas tarps and woven mats. Safe from birds, safe from sudden rain. For now, you sit in the dirt arms across your knees, watching the sun set over your scraped clean field. It's like seeing your child grow up and leave bittersweet and quiet. You're exhausted beyond language, but you've done it. You reaped what you sowed, and you're still standing. The field may be bare, but the work is far from over. You wake the next morning with every part of you protesting. Your fingers won't straighten. Your legs feel like you walked to Rome and back. Your back. Let's not discuss your back. But the barley's not going to thresh itself, and so you rise, pull on your least filthy tunic, and limp out toward the barn. Threshing. The word alone makes your shoulders tense. Out behind the cottage, you've cleared a flat patch of dirt ringed with woven straw mats to catch the chaff. You set up the flail. 2 sticks connected by a bit of leather, one long, one short. It looks harmless. It is not. You grab a sheaf, lay it on the threshing floor, raise the flail, and bring it down. Whack. A puff of dust. Whack. A few kernels spill. Whack. Your shoulder twinges. It's not glorious. It's not clever. It's just work, rhythmic, dull, and strangely meditative if you let it be. You fall into a tempo, arms rising and falling, breath in time with the beat. The grain shakes loose from the heads, bouncing and scattering. After a while, it feels like you're trying to pound bread from rocks. And yet, there's a weird sort of satisfaction in it. The others join in as the day warms. Jory's son has too much energy and not enough aim. He thwacks himself in the shin within 5 minutes. Your daughter learns quickly, her flail steady and sharp. You try not to look too proud. Your wife keeps pace with you. Her sleeves rolled up, face streaked with dust and sweat. Later you start winnowing. This is the part where you separate the grain from everything else. The chaff, the stems, the bits of barley beard that get stuck in your tunic for weeks. You pour a scoop into a wide basket stand in the wind and toss the mix into the air. The heavier grain drops. The lighter junk drifts away. You repeat this over and over, squinting into the breeze as barley rains back down. If the wind dies, you take turns blowing across the grain with your cheeks puffed like bellows. It works. Kind of. Mostly you end up dizzy. Did you know that some peasants believed the wind itself was sacred during winnowing? That a proper breeze was a sign of divine favor? Historians still argue whether that's poetic nonsense or a practical excuse for choosing high ground. Either way, you thank the wind every time it picks up. By midday, your mouth is dry, your hair full of husks, and the back of your neck is sunburnt. But the sacks are filling. The grain pours out golden warm to the touch, smelling faintly of earth and sunlight. You run your hands through it, letting it sift between your fingers. It's yours. Well, mostly. You glance over at the growing pile and already feel the tension settle back in. The steward will return soon, so that evening, as the family scrapes the last of the barley porridge from the pot, you take stock. You count the full sacks twice, then again. You calculate how many you'll have to give: 1 for the church, tithe 3 for the Lord, maybe another voluntary offering if the steward's in a mood. That leaves less than you hoped. Your wife sees it on your face. "We'll stretch it," she says. She always says that. And somehow she always does. The next day, the neighbors gather at the barn. There's something different in the air, not just dust and straw, but energy. People talk. They laugh. They share water skins and crusts of bread. The work continues, but now there's conversation gossip mostly. Who had a good yield? Who didn't? Who's pretending they did? You keep your ears open and your mouth mostly shut. That evening, you and Gerwin sit outside watching the sunset. He has a small cut on his chin from a flail misfire. You both smell like roasted hay. "Think it'll last us?" he asks. "Depends who you mean by us," you mutter. He snorts, then nods. You know what's next. Measuring, weighing, listing, and handing it over. Tomorrow begins the tallying, and the tension. You wake to bells. Not the church bells, the smaller ones. The ones tied to the steward's mule jingling in smug little chimes as it trots into the village, followed by 2 record keepers and a wagon stacked with sealed crates. The tallying has begun. You tie your cloak tight, though it's already warm, and grab your best grain sack, meaning the one without a rat-sized hole at the bottom. You head toward the weighing station set up in the manor courtyard beneath a faded canvas awning. The scale hangs from a wooden frame like a gallows for hopes. You take your place in line. Jory's ahead of you, whispering calculations under his breath. Gerwin stands behind you, arms crossed like a man being marched to trial. Everyone has the same expression, somewhere between resignation and quiet panic. The steward appears, parchment in one hand, feathered quill in the other. He is as ever clean-shaven, dry-booted, and gently perspiring in that way that says I've never actually carried anything heavier than this scroll. Your turn comes. You step up, heave the sack onto the scale, and hold your breath. The beam tilts. He nods. 3 bushels, 0.5, he says to the clerk, who writes it down with great ceremony. Then comes the real moment, the subtraction. For the tithe, the steward announces removing a scoop. For the domain, another scoop. For winter levy, he adds with a smirk. It's not required, but refusing it means someone will accidentally trample your garden later. You're left with a little over 2/3 of your original sack, which is better than last year, and worse than it should be. You smile. You thank him. You walk away with your mouth full of splinters and no words to spit them out. Back at home, you empty the grain into the storage bin, just a wooden chest lined with cloth and herbs to keep pests out. Your wife runs her fingers through it silently. She doesn't ask how much is gone. She knows. She begins tallying her own way with jars and sacks and mental arithmetic you'll never understand. You fetch water while she calculates. Your daughter nearby is shelling beans. Your son tries to catch flies in a jar. You all keep busy because otherwise you'd stew. Later, the village gathers in the square. Not for protest heavens, no, but for the official harvest account. The steward reads out totals. Whose land yielded what? Who paid fully? Who's in arrears? It's less like a festival and more like a public shaming if you're unlucky. You avoid eye contact during the reading. Gerwin's name comes up. Low yield. He grunts. Jory surprisingly did well. Someone jokes that he must have bribed the saints with mushrooms. Everyone laughs too loud too long. Afterward, a few of you retreat to the edge of the field with the leftover ale keg. It's watery, it's warm, but it's ale. You drink in long gulps, watching the sky fade from gold to plum. The tension in your chest begins to unwind. Sort of. One of the younger men, a lad from the far hamlet, mentions that the steward took his best grain even after he already paid his tithe. Someone else nods. Another adds that the steward's new boots look awfully fine this year. The murmurs spread like sparks on dry straw. You don't speak, but you listen, closely, because this is the season where power shows its face. Not during plowing, not during sowing, during taking. Did you know that medieval lords often exaggerated the taxes owed, especially in poor years? Some had ledgers rewritten after harvest to correct miscounts. Historians still argue whether this was corruption or simple incompetence. You're not sure it matters. By the time you return home, the stars are out. Your wife is asleep, arm curled around your youngest. The fire's low. You settle beside them, sore and slightly drunk, and watch the ceiling shadows dance. You whisper the numbers to yourself one more time. What you gave, what you kept, what you'll need. Then you close your eyes and hope it adds up. Because if it doesn't, you'll have to get creative. The ledger is closed. The grain is stored. The taxes are paid or close enough to keep the steward from darkening your doorway again this week. So now finally it's time for something that almost feels like luxury. The feast. Not some royal banquet, mind you. There are no golden platters, no roast peacocks with feathers reattached. This is the village harvest celebration, humble, haphazard, and utterly necessary. A single evening to pretend the coming winter isn't sharpening its teeth. You start the day smoking fish. Jory caught a few river eels, slimy, suspicious things, but surprisingly edible when drowned in garlic and regret. Your wife is baking. Not flatbread. Not porridge cakes. Real bread. Risen. Browned. Possibly blessed by the flower spirits. The oven smells like heaven if heaven had soot in it. Other villagers are bringing whatever they can scavenge, ferment, or disguise. Gerwin's wife brings 2 pies and refuses to say what's in them. You don't ask. The healer contributes pickled onions so strong your eyes water from 3 feet away. A shepherd arrives with goat cheese and a song. By midday, the square is alive. Someone strung faded banners across the well. The children run between stools and fire pits, faces smudged with ash and stolen fruit. The priest blesses the food with a prayer suspiciously recycled from the planting season. No one cares. You sit at a rough-hewn table next to your daughter, who's attempting to balance a plum on her forehead. She fails, laughs, tries again. Across from you, a pair of field hands argue about the best way to sharpen a sickle. One insists it should always be clockwise. The other says moonwise. You eat slowly. Bread, cheese, roots roasted with herbs, even a sliver of salted pork. The flavors hit differently now, maybe because you earned them with your spine. Or maybe because they're shared. Then the music begins. A boy with a cracked lute strums the first notes. A woman with a voice like gravel starts a ballad. The lyrics shift halfway through into something bawdy and wildly inaccurate about St. Dunstan and a goat. You laugh harder than you should. Someone pulls you up to dance. You resist. You always do. And you always lose. Your feet move like sacks of grain, but no one notices. Everyone is dancing badly. The kind of dancing born of relief and fatigue and ale. It's wonderful. Your wife dances 2 barefoot in the dirt, hair loose for the first time in months. You catch her eye. She rolls it. You're terrible. She smiles anyway. Did you know that harvest feasts in medieval villages were often the only time many peasants tasted meat all year, or drank anything stronger than thin ale? Historians still argue whether the church fully approved. Some bishops called it vulgar indulgence. Others called it practical morale maintenance. You call it sanity. As the sun dips behind the trees, torches are lit. Shadows flicker. The songs grow slower, sadder. One old man sings of a village that vanished in a storm. Another sings of a boy who married the river. Both stories are ridiculous. Both bring a tear to someone's eye. You sit again watching your son fall asleep on his sister's lap. She strokes his hair absently, mouth sticky with honey cake. Around you, the talk shifts to winter. How much firewood is stacked? Who's trapping extra rabbits? Who heard that the miller's wife is storing salt just in case? The edge is back. Not fear exactly, but awareness. This won't last. So you stay a little longer. You drink a little more. And when the crowd thins, you help stack the stools, stomp out the embers, and carry your children home, one under each arm, like squirmy sacks of grain. Back at the cottage, your wife tucks them into the pile of blankets and straw that serves as your shared bed. You sit by the hearth, stoking the coals with a stick, letting the silence settle. Outside, an owl calls once, then again. Inside, the fire crackles softly, casting long shadows up the wall. You stretch your legs. Your bones creak. You think of the harvest, of the feast, of the whispered plans and uncertain forecasts. And you feel it, a brief, fragile peace. The feast is over. The music has faded. The torches are cold. Now comes the part no one likes to talk about, the long, slow slide into scarcity. It starts small. A cool breeze in the morning that wasn't there the day before. A leaf gone yellow too early. The last of the berries withered on the vine. Your daughter asks if she can still go barefoot, and your wife answers with a look. You spend your days preparing, not farming, preparing. There's kindling to chop, root vegetables to pull, beans to dry. You dig up what carrots survived the summer and layer them in barrels with straw. The parsnips are knobbly and rude-looking, but they'll boil. You set traps along the hedgerows for rabbits. You check them twice a day, whispering apologies to whatever gets caught. And then there's the cellar. You and Jory reinforced yours last winter after a collapse that nearly buried your potato stores and your dignity. You crawl down now, carrying sacks of barley beans, turnips, even dried apples, a rare treat thanks to Gerwin's orchard. The air down here is cool, musty, and oddly calming, like the earth is holding its breath. You arrange everything with care, not because